Aaron, where are you? Where is Aaron right now? You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is one step closer to the total collapse of Scientology. Buckle up, guys. This one's going to get a little spicy. Muy caliente. The inspiration for tonight's video is this article, and a letter to the editor, submitted by Scientologist and Austin Scientology staff member, Corbin Springer. This was submitted to the Daily Texan, if I recall correctly, serving the University of Texas at Austin Community since 1990. So Corbin Springer, he and his brother are both alumni of UT, which is unusual for Scientologists. It's unusual for children of Scientologists to go to college. And real quick, I'll show you. This is Corbin. He's the one on the left. And this is Corbin's brother, Barton. And that brings us back to this article, where Corbin Springer wrote a letter as an alumni of UT, basically condemning the protesters who protested the re-grand opening of the building for the Austin Org as hateful bigots, and just letting the student body of UT know that Scientology and UT share the same principles. Now, I will at some point in this video share with you part of his letter here. You know what? It's probably appropriate to start with some of what he says, but what we're actually going to discuss in this video, and I just realized I neglected to do something in the back office on YouTube, just like I did last time. Okay, good. Just fix that. What we're really here to discuss in this video is the bank fraud, credit card fraud, and loan fraud, and other crimes that Corbin Springer's family has been involved in with respect to the Church of Scientology of Austin itself, and the fundraising, the money that was raised to fund the very building that was being protested. Because multiple inside sources in Austin, Texas have shared with me that approximately 80% of the nearly $25 million that was raised to renovate this building was raised illegally through credit card fraud, bank fraud, and loan fraud, specifically using credit unions, small banks, and the armed services credit unions. And Corbin Springer and another Scientologist, Jonathan Davitt, are two. Jonathan Davitt is the key player, one of the key players in the fraud. Corbin Springer was just one of the suckers. But as is usual in Scientology, when you're talking about crimes committed in the churches of Scientology or the Scientology organizations, it's never usually just one type of crime. So when we're talking about the Springer family, we're not only talking about loan fraud, bank fraud, we're also talking about statutory rape. And I'm going to share the whole story with you. But again, the whole story is inspired by Corbin Springer's letter to the editor. So let's just take a look at some of what Corbin had to say here. I am a University of Texas graduate, he says. I'm also a Scientologist. Before enrolling in UT, during my time there and since graduating, I've been a member of my church and a member of the West Campus community. I've grown up here and I call this area my home. As you've probably heard, my church just had its grand opening of our newly renovated building that we've occupied for decades on the drag. For Scientologists all over, this was a massive celebration. What you may have also heard about is a handful of hateful protesters around our church. This is simply religious intolerance. While minoring in religious studies, I got to have discussions about the realities of religious discrimination with Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and atheist students, to name a few. This is nothing new. I'm sorry, I skipped a sentence. There's a part of the sentence I didn't want to read out loud because I don't know how YouTube's going to treat it, but let's just do it. Unfortunately, in my lifetime, I have seen increased religious hate, especially against Jewish and Muslim people. This is nothing new, and my church is no stranger to it. I know that the students of the university in the main do not support this type of intolerance. When I was a student in 2016, I stood in front of the UT Tower with hundreds of fellow students protesting this same brand of intolerance. I am writing today to tell you that Scientology stands for what I firmly believe the students of the University of Texas and all Austinites stand for: tolerance. For my conversations with members of my church, UT students, professors, and members of other religious organizations, I know that a handful of haters is not reflective of how most of us feel. I believe all of us want to live in a world where people are free to practice their religions or not. My church, much like the University of Texas, is a diverse group of people from a variety of backgrounds. We are Scientologists because it has helped us. If you want to know what Scientology is all about, you're always free to come inside and see. If you do not want to, that is totally fine too. I know that I speak for all Austin Scientologists when I say that we are very happy to be a part of this community, and we will do everything we can to make it a happy place to live. Scientology.org is our website for anyone to see for themselves. All right. Well, that is perfectly adorable. So let's get this story started. As I said, this is Corbin Springer. And this on the right is Corbin Springer's mom, Stacy Sass. Now, Stacy is presently married to Jim Sass. And Jim Sass is a very wealthy Scientologist in the Austin area. And I believe as a couple, they have donated close to $3 million to the Austin building. Now, Jim is not Corbin's dad. Stacy is Corbin's mom. Before Stacy was married to Jim, Stacy was married to Tracy. Tracy is a man. That is what Tracy used to look like. Stacy and Tracy were married for a long time, and they had a number of kids. Everything was going along fine until Tracy cheated on Stacy with Stacy's younger sister, Sheila. Oopsie. As if that wasn't bad enough, the problem is that Tracy was in his late 20s, early 30s. Sheila was a minor. By the way, this is a current photo of Sheila. This is not a photo of Sheila as a minor. Sheila was 14 years old. My inside sources tell me it's possible she was 15, but they believe she was 14 years old. Now, what did Scientology do when they found out that one of their leading upstanding members of the community had cheated on his wife with an underage child, his wife's sister? Did they involve the authorities? Did they expel Tracy from Scientology? No. Sheila, the 14-year-old, happened to also be at the time a staff member of the Church of Scientology of Austin. So all they did was send her to Clearwater, Florida for training. Yes, instead of involving the authorities in a crime that had occurred against a Scientologist child, they transported that unaccompanied minor across state lines to Florida. I think that's called child trafficking. And she stayed in Florida and did her training, where she conveniently finished her training at the age of 17, which is the age of consent in Texas, and was sent back to Austin, where she then married Tracy. And then they had several kids of their own. Very convenient that once they're married, you know, they can't really prosecute a crime there. Okay, so where does that bring us in this story? Yes, let's go back to Corbin. Okay, now, during this time, Corbin and his brother, Barton, but Barton's not really a part of this story to the best of my knowledge. Corbin was, as he says in his article, going to the University of Texas. Okay, so now let's enter into the story. A gentleman that I knew from my time in the Sea Org named Jonathan Davitt. Jonathan Davitt was a Sea Org member working on L. Ron Hubbard Way, where I worked when I was in the Sea Org. We weren't close, but we knew each other. And Jonathan Davitt, this is his LinkedIn profile. It currently says that he's an office manager. Fine. Let's see what he says he did after leaving the Sea Org and relocating to Austin. He was the senior fundraiser, lead fundraiser, senior fundraiser for a nonprofit church organization located in Austin. I was responsible for raising $7.2 million from parishioners, which included fundraising, managing sales teams, setting and meeting quotas and social media marketing. The project was completed with fantastic results. That is so good for you, Jonathan Davitt. Now, I do not recall why Jonathan Davitt left the Sea Org, whether he routed out or whether he was kicked out. I do not recall, and I do not recall why he ended up in Austin. What I do know is that he ended up being the lead head major fundraiser for the Austin org, and that nearly 100% of the almost $8 million that he raised was raised illegally. Credit card fraud, bank fraud, loan fraud. And one of the people who got suckered into that fraud was Corbin Springer. The same Corbin Springer who is writing a letter to the editor about how the protesters outside of the Church of Scientology are hateful bigots, and Scientology shares all the same values as the UT alumni. Well, since Corbin is writing his letter to the editor in a paper that I think the paper's distribution is the students of UT, the students of UT might like to know that what Corbin did with his student loans, the money that was loaned to Corbin for his classes at UT, instead of using that money for UT, he gave the money to Jonathan Davitt. He gave the money to the Church of Scientology of Austin for their building. They couldn't have picked a worse person to write a letter to the editor, because now I'm doing this video. Okay. So something happened, something came up, because these financial irregularities, all this illegal activity, it's like this pendulum swing that occurs in Scientology where the executives will turn a blind eye. They know it's happening, but they're pretending it's not happening. And then once something happens that makes it too obvious and they can't pretend that they don't know, then they like come down with a hammer and nuke everyone. And anyway, it's this pendulum swing that occurs in Scientology constantly. So once Corbin's, something flapped, something happened. Someone's like, uh-oh, illegal stuff is going on. Stacy and Jim, so Stacy Sass, no longer Stacy Springer. I think their maiden name was like Patterson. I think Sheila and Stacy's maiden names are Patterson, but we're talking about Corbin's mom. Corbin's mom and her rich husband, once they found out that their son Corbin was going to be in trouble because he illegally used his student loans, they stepped in and paid off all of the student loans to minimize any legal liability. Well, that's fine. That's good. But one of the things about doing that is it doesn't erase the crime that was committed. Mark my words, guys. When Scientology loses its tax-exempt status, it is going to be because of the hundreds of millions of dollars of credit card fraud, bank fraud, and loan fraud, which really are just, to me, sound like different versions of the same thing. They might all be the same thing, but you guys know what I mean. Hundreds of millions of dollars of bank fraud, credit card fraud, loan fraud, wire fraud that Scientology has committed over the last 20 years. Largely in part due to the fundraising pressures that have existed for raising money for these giant new buildings that are 10 times bigger than anything any Scientology organization needs. And the cost of these buildings are 10, 20, 30 times more than Scientologists can afford. There aren't enough Scientologists in the world to pay for these buildings. There aren't enough Scientologists in the world to staff these buildings. And yet David Miscavige puts unthinkable pressure on the fundraisers and the staff members. By the way, Jonathan Davitt was working hand in hand and being run by two Sea Org members named Mariella and Marlissa. It's either Marlissa or Marlisa, who are the Sea Org members who are ideal org fundraisers for the entire United States. Jonathan Davitt, as a former Sea Org member, being a former Sea Org member in Scientology is like, you're like lowest on the caste system. Like you are, Scientology says former Sea Org members are degraded beings because they have violated, they've broken their billion-year contracts, their billion-year commitments to work for Scientology forever. They signed that contract, they broke their contract. L. Ron Hubbard says they're degraded beings. So when someone like Jonathan Davitt ends up in Austin, And then 2 Sea Org fundraisers get shipped out to Austin to move heaven and earth to raise all the money necessary. They own Jonathan Davitt. So now I'm not saying Jonathan Davitt's not responsible for what he did, but I'm saying these guys rode Jonathan Davitt hard and put him away wet. That's always a funny expression to say, but I think I know what it means. Okay, so Mariella and Marlisa and Jonathan Davitt and other fundraisers in the Austin area committed $15 to $20 million of bank fraud, credit card fraud, wire fraud, loan fraud to raise the money. And Corbin Springer and Stacey Springer and Stacey Sass and Jim Sass were all wrapped into it. We're all wrapped up into that, pulled into it. But let's be honest, every Scientologist in Austin has participated in this. Damn near every Scientologist in Austin has participated in this. And every city in the world where Scientology is fundraising for these giant buildings that usually sit for decades empty, and then eventually David Miscavige, a building will be finished and he'll come and pull a ribbon and he'll act like Scientology is expanding. In every one of these cities, this type of fraud is occurring. Now, one of the reasons it's okay to do videos about this, someone might go, "Oh my God, don't, aren't you giving it away? They're going to go burn all the documents. They're going to shred all the documents." These financial crimes, this is the stuff the government specializes in. You can go burn and shred all the documents that you want. It doesn't matter. The federal government has all of the reach and the subpoena power and the access necessary to get all the records and all the documents. This is what they're good at. This is what is going to take Scientology down. So to all of you students at UT Austin, if that's the right word for it. So there's different UT campuses. I don't understand the college world very well, guys, because I didn't go to college. I didn't go to high school. I grew up in a cult. So UT or UT Austin or UT West Campus, whatever it's called. When you read this letter to the editor from Corbin Springer, just know you're getting a letter from someone who took his student loans and gave it to Scientology to pay for that building. And this is the guy who wants to talk smack about the hateful, bigoted protesters outside of the building. It's absolutely incredible. You done messed up, Corbin. You should have kept your mouth shut, because now we're talking about you. All right, that really is all I have to say about this. I think I have one more video I want to do tonight, but I'm starting to feel pretty crappy. I thought I was getting better, and then the last couple hours, I started to feel a lot more crappy. I'm sounding better, right? I don't sound as sick as I sounded the last few days, but it's getting a little rough. So we'll see if I have enough in me to do one more video. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me yet another time today. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,